Welcome to the More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it, real debate without the hate. Hi, I'm Kevin Kelton. I'm a political activist and a moderate Democrat from Los Angeles, California.
Hi there, I'm DJ McGuire, an economics instructor from Suffolk, Virginia, a veteran Republican activist until last year, and a rookie Democratic activist as of last month.
I'm Greg Matuzak, a liberal Democrat and veteran of many political campaigns from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hello, I'm Molly Malloy Cooper. I'm a senior lecturer of economics at The Ohio State University and a free market conservative from Columbus, Ohio.
And the More Perfect Union can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can also find host bios and commentary. And this week we had a special guest commentary by Bill Gleed about grand juries. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But right now, let's start with what was our headline last week that 24 hours later became our Moot headline. We went from the Mooch to the Moot, because the Mooch got canned right after our show went on the air. And we had spent, I think, 10 minutes. Well, you guys, I wasn't here. You guys spent about 10 minutes talking about him, which was a really good conversation, by the way. But as all things Mooch, they're all moot now.
Do you think that we have that much power? Do you think that someone was listening
absolutely.
and said, these guys have some...
No, I think Kelly said, if Molly Cooper cannot defend... he is indefensible and he must go.
I thought it was Trump who I thought Donald Trump, he was like in between tweets going, where's that R? Where's the R? The R. Oh, what did they just say? Oh, no, I'm bigly angry. And, I'm bigly riled up.
So, okay, we've had some fun. So, Anthony Scaramucci was canned 10 days after he started his job as communications director. And there's some talk now that Stephen Miller may be the one to replace him. Everybody knows who Stephen Miller is. He's the guy who got into it with Dan Acosta.
Jim Acosta,
thank you. So he got into it with Jim Acosta at CNN over immigration this week, and we're going to talk more about that issue. But is Stephen Miller, do you think, a suitable replacement or a suitable communications director for any White House?
It's a short answer, no. Long answer, no.
Yeah, he seems a little rough around the edges to me.
Compared to
professional communications directors.
Okay, so not compared just to his immediate predecessor.
I liked the Mooch. I like a guy who immediately gets on the phone on an on-the-record call and accuses one of his associates of giving himself fellatio, and then accuses everybody else in the White House of being out to get him.
Right. So there's rough around the edges, and there's rough around the edges. But, I mean, it's not Omarosa, so, you know.
Oh, that will be... Wait 20 days, and we'll see Omarosa. No, the thing about... If you would have said Tuesday, Stephen Miller would have been. But I think that exchange happened on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I think that sealed it, because that has been played over and over. And when Stephen Miller couldn't defend the Statue of Liberty and was like, well, let's do this on a technicality, that it was like in 1886, it wasn't originally, and he started playing that game, which the Trump base, they hate that.
I don't know whether they hate this guy. I mean, supposedly he was making a big pitch to the right-wing base, but when I don't pretend to know the mentality of the people in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania that voted for Trump. But when I think of them, when I imagine them, I don't associate them with people that don't really love the Statue of Liberty and the Emma Lazarus poem.
No, they don't. They have in their mind, the Statue of Liberty and the Emma Lazarus poem are for their Irish, Polish, and German ancestors. They're not for anybody who's trying to come into the country today.
Okay. That's a great answer, TJ. I think you're right.
That's just the way it is. And whatever Miller tried to say about the poem itself, the fact that he was defending the Trump's new immigration pet bill, and again we'll talk about that in a minute, I think improves his standing with the base. From what I've seen, it was not universal condemnation. of his battle with Acosta. In fact, I think he scored some chits on the right
Yes.
for taking Acosta on.
Yes.
Excuse me. So I think that confrontation made it more likely that he would take over Scaramucci's old job.
Okay. Why not our friend Kellyanne Conway? Why are they holding her back? Why are they keeping her in the bullpen?
I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I would guess she's still out there. They're pending, but
What is her job? I mean, like, does she actually have an official position in the White House?
I think she's called a special counselor. Usually those people just get the title special
something like that,
counselor.
counselor to the president. She's probably the backup for chief of staff when the whole Mattis experiment not Mattis,
Kelly?
Kelly.
when Kelly that experiment blows up. And
I mean, respectfully, DJ, I don't see her as chief of staff even in a Trump White House.
Yeah, but it's not your point. It's not your point of vision that matters. It's Trump's point of vision.
Okay, so we when we were talking about Stephen Miller, somebody mentioned immigration, and he did have that contentious confrontation with Jim Acosta this week about immigration. What do you guys think of this new raise legislation, which apparently is going no place? I want to hear from you, and then I'll weigh in on my opinion.
All right, I'll start. I'll say something positive about it to start with, in that our major immigration policy was formed in 1965, so it is outdated and it does need to be revisited. That having been said, this is not the way to go. First of all, the overall plans to cut the number of immigrants, legal immigrants, over the next 10 years in half, I believe, ultimately is where we're going. I don't see that we're in a position to do that. I don't think that we suffer from too many immigrants. We may suffer from possibly, and I guess what the motivation that was supposed to be is to have the right kind of immigrants, and I do applaud that, but this does not seem to be very well thought out.
The immigration policy we have in place, which is now over 50 years old, from an economic perspective, if you try to make it the economic equivalent of maybe from the scientific perspective, it's a policy that's from the economic equivalent of before the Industrial Revolution. It's that old and it's that antiquated. We know better about how to use immigration policy to advance the economy, in particular on the supply side. We need more high-skilled immigrants. We need more immigrants with capital who are willing to invest it. This bill does nothing to do that. All this bill does is it cuts immigration in various other areas and does nothing to actually increase high-skilled immigration or immigration with capital. It is a Malthusian's wet dream, forgive the language, and it's a nightmare for the rest of us.
Watch your mouth there, DJ. All right, like Molly, I'll start off with something positive. I'm positive this is probably one of the worst bills I've ever seen. I didn't see that coming. Yeah. So, two, y'all are smarter than me with that whole economics thing, so I won't go there. What really bothers me about this is they knew going in this bill has no chance of getting through. Not at all. It's just red meat. It's chum for their base. It's never gonna happen. And once again, they're like, who can we blame for all the political woes? Why don't you have a bigger TV? Why are your kids not really that bright? Oh, it's the immigrants. It's just that. Is that a straw man? I know. It's something. It's a boogeyman. And they love it. And that's that 38% of that will always vote for Trump. Okay, and it will never pass this Congress, let alone Senate, and they know that. But Trump is out there, and his people if only we had better legal immigrants who could, speak English in this great country of ours that was founded on English, which is our national language, which it isn't. So yes, hate this.
Okay. So I agree with everything that's been said. It's interesting to hear the conservatives have a lot of skepticism about it. But as I've said on the podcast, not for a while, but in the past, This is one of the areas why I call myself a moderate Democrat, because on immigration, I'm a little bit less liberal than, say, Greg is and a lot of traditional Democrats are. I do have concerns about our immigration policy. I would not go to the extent that Republicans want to go, but I do have some concerns about the numbers that are coming in and how they affect the overall employment outlook in our country. So that being said, I thought the principle of the legislation, and I didn't read the legislation, I just read some articles about it. I thought the idea of getting away from the pure lottery and giving some weight to the characteristics that any given potential immigree brings to the nation, I thought in principle that was an okay idea. I agree with you, Molly, that the idea of going down to 50% of the numbers that we're at now within 5 to 10 years seems silly to me. I just don't know why we have to cut that far. And I wouldn't go to a system where no one who can't speak English could come to the United States. I would like some type of a hybrid. But I agree with Molly and DJ, who said the old system may be antiquated and maybe there are improvements to be had.
You know, after Arizona did what they did with clamping down on illegal immigrants and the what's been called the "show us your papers" law, they found that right after it was a negative to their economy, as they lost some very needed workers. But in the long run, fiscally, it did work out for them because they were just getting slammed and overburdened in both their hospitals as well as their education with the expensive English as a second language classes. And I mean, I'm torn on that. I don't really see the English requirement as being, that big a deal. People do adapt, assimilate. They always have. I had a good friend from childhood whose dad got moved here with this company, and she spent the first year watching TV as a 5-year-old, learned English, enrolled in school, and was fine. But then others, if they aren't learning English year after year after year, that does present a burden. But I just like to see some more research and data and how to address this a problem rather than just this kind of, again, throwing weight around or throwing red meat and saying, well, the answer to that is we're just going to ban people who can't speak.
And again, the issue here, the issue here is the fact that what we don't in the past when we have had mass waves of immigration. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, we had folks who were low-skilled and high-skilled coming into the country. This may surprise people, but for the most part, whatever the numbers may be, it is much harder. It can be harder for a high-skilled foreign national to get into the country than it is for a low-skilled foreign national. And in part, the Trump administration, I actually looked at some of the particulars, and some of the particulars don't really make it that much easier for high-skilled immigrants. They have to have a job offer on the table before they come over here, which essentially creates mini monopsonies, which is the monopoly. That's a monopolist on the labor side, that depress wages at the high-skilled level.
By the way, my favorite Disney character, mini monopsonies.
Yeah, very funny. And in many respects, it makes it harder than it should for a high-skilled foreign national to become an American immigrant. And that's one of the things that we need to change. What we need more than anything else is more high-skilled immigrants in this country, not fewer immigrants from every other way of life. And instead, we've gotten the fewer immigrants from every other way of life in the Cotton, Trump, Purdue bill. That's the wrong way. That's the wrong way of solving the problem. So it won't solve the problem. It'll just make it worse.
Interesting. Great. And what about this situation in Chicago with the sanctuary cities that they're suing the Trump administration over the sanctuary city funding? Is that right?
Yeah, actually, let's. I'll take it. America's mayor. No. I can't even say that with a straight face. Mayor Rahm Emanuel of Chicago, which our favorite nine-fingered mayor, is suing the Trump administration over over city funding from the government. Because he's a sanctuary city, and he's like, no, this is our money, and you can't do this because it's two different things, and we'll see where it goes by there. And I have to agree with him. I mean, this is ridiculous. He's using the quote that he uses. They're using police for pawns over these giant political games, which they should have nothing to do with. And we haven't talked about sanctuary cities and fundings here on the show, but, you know, you're literally asking, there's a relationship that the police should have with the illegal communities, immigration, and now all of a sudden you're making them turn people out and you're ruining, and it's a different situation. Now, they do keep the murderers and things like that, and they do check for those, but people with speeding tickets, that's a different subject. I mean, so
I think we need more high-skilled murderers in this country, and
well,
that's the immigration system I'd like to see.
Immigration system.
They got one of those in Chicago, actually.
I wish everybody could see
Northwestern.
DJ's face right now.
DJ's about to. I can't tell if he's upset because I called Rahm Emanuel America's
I've
mayor.
had enough rum and coke tonight to take most of that in stride.
DJ, now that you bring it up, we wanted to tell you something. This isn't really a podcasting. This is an intervention. We want to talk to you about your Sunday drinking. Do you know that we haven't done a podcast in about a month and a half where you haven't bragged about being drunk?
That's not true. I was. That's not true.
Yeah.
I think 2 weeks. Well, actually, no, it was the one that you missed last week.
No, there was
I
a
had to be
drinking
sober.
reference in there. I heard it.
But no, but
And you also called Greg Kevin.
but I actually do recall there was a podcast. We did a podcast in, I think, February or March where I was sober, and it was our worst podcast all year. And I actually promised the listeners I would never do a podcast sober again because I knew how bad it was.
I do recall
or how bad I was.
I do recall that. I stand corrected. And we are only kidding, DJ. We love DJ. And the truth of the matter is, when he does drink, he doesn't drink to excess on the show. He just likes to, he's just our Foster Brooks. That's all. So, okay, back to politics.
Back to the subject at hand. The deeper question here, though, is: are local police forces supposed to enforce federal immigration law? And that you're not going to get. I don't know if even the Constitution gives a clear answer on that, in part because the Constitution doesn't give a clear answer on who's responsible for immigration policy in the first place. That was a court decision from the 1880s that said an idea of, maybe the federal government does have some power over immigration. So that's the first thing. We don't know, or we don't have a clear answer as to whether local police forces should enforce federal immigration policy. I, for one, I have come to the conclusion now that I don't think it is wise to have them do that. With all due respect to local police forces, they seem to have done a really bang up job enforcing the state and local laws that are on the books right now. I don't really think it is, as much as we like to give all immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, the full American experience. I don't know if that necessarily has to include horrific fear of what will happen to them if they're stopped by police, too.
And speaking of rights, there's another right that is in the news this week, and actually has been in the news for the entire Trump administration, which is the First Amendment and how it relates to leaks out of the White House. Jeff Sessions, I think because of the president's directive, is trying to stomp out leaks coming out of the White House and coming out of the administration. But on some level, is he getting into First Amendment territory? What do you think?
I think so. And, I said the same thing, a year ago, or was it a year? I don't know whatever it was when the Obama administration faced a similar issue where they were trying to ferret out leaks. And among other things, it was revealed that they were spying on, I believe it was James Rosen from Fox News and tapping his phones as well as that of his parents. And I found it outrageous then. I find Sessions saying that as well. I do not think it's a good thing about what was leaked, especially phone calls with other, high up foreign leaders. That's terrible for us going forward. And it does need to be put a stop to it, but you put a stop to it on your end, not on the press. The press is just doing their job and reporting the news, what the source they have. If it's your official that's leaking, you got to find it from the inside. You can't go after the press.
And we know where this stuff leads because we saw it with the Scooter Libby prosecution, which was an utterly idiotic thing to do. Scooter Libby I'm serious. No. Scooter Libby was not the source of the Valerie Plame leak, and the special prosecutor Patrick Fitzgerald knew it. We all knew it because Bob Novak told us that he told us who the source was. It was Richard Armitage, who was Colin Powell's chief of staff, and a fellow Iraq War dove. It wasn't Scooter Libby. Libby was told, if I remember correctly, Libby was told by Novak that Armitage had leaked it, so he just confirmed it. So Libby goes to prison for something Armitage did when no one was even going to consider prosecuting Armitage. It became political. It became a desperate attempt by Fitzgerald to get a scalp. He, of course, then went on to so thoroughly botch the Conrad Black prosecution that the Supreme Court nearly threw out every conviction that was had in that case. But that's what happens when you do this sort of thing. You go, okay, we're going to find the leaker. And then when you don't find the leaker, say, okay, we're going to find someone close enough to the leaker to make it look like we did something. And then the wrong people go to prison.
Well, I think in all honesty, with the Scooter Libby, there was pressure that Libby would turn. But I think due to promises made to Libby that he would get pardoned, because there was pressure, and W actually had written that Dick Cheney had asked him repeatedly to pardon Libby, or fear from Cheney that Cheney would eat his soul, whatever.
Which you did,
I do believe that he just said, I'll jump on this one and something good will happen to me down the road. There'll be a steak dinner in my name. Who knows? You conservatives crack me up. Whatever the hell you'll do. Now, he lost his license to practice law, but still won't get him into heaven later on.
Yeah. And speaking of speaking of people who had to eat their souls, Donald Trump this week had to sign the Russian sanctions legislation that came out of the Senate and the House that he desperately dislikes. And he had a little, I don't want to steal your line, DJ. What did you call it?
I called it the sign and wine.
Ooh.
Because that's essentially what he did. He signed it and then he whined about it. He put out a signing statement saying that, oh, well, I don't really think this is constitutional, which is BS, because if it's unconstitutional, what you're supposed to do as president is veto the damn thing. You don't sign unconstitutional bills. You veto them and you say they're unconstitutional. That's what you're supposed to do as president of the United States, not what he did. But then he goes on Twitter a couple days later and says, oh, relations with Russia are at an all-time low, blame Congress. Basically, he's upset that Congress passed this bill, but he is too weak and too cowardly to actually veto it and see if it gets overridden.
Well, it passed 97 to
so he did
1,
what?
Right? Or 97 to 3?
Yeah, so George W. Bush vetoed the Farm Bill in 2008, knowing full well it was going to get overridden. But it was the principle of the thing. It was a stupid bill. It was horrific. It was horrifically damaging to the economy. And he said, I don't care if it's going to get overridden. I'm vetoing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. If Trump thought it was the right thing to do, and clearly he did because he's complained about it ever since, then veto it and, put yourself on the line. He doesn't want to do that, so instead he does the sign and whine. Now, I think the sanctions were the right thing to do. I liked the bill, don't get me wrong. I'm glad he signed it. But, from his perspective, if he had the strength that he claims he does, he would have vetoed it and challenged the Congress to override his veto. The fact that he didn't just shows that he's weak.
But it's not so much, it's, once again, Trump has this brilliant ability to reach that 38% and rewrite history, reality, whatever, with 144 characters. So, and you guys kind of guffawed, but it's amazing. So 38% of the country right now are saying, wow, that was unconstitutional. They must have held his like masculine body down with like iron clamps and because I'm sure he probably wrote that in his first draft and he said, they probably won't. Oh, maybe I will, because he warps reality.
Yes,
144 characters. Yes.
I don't know. I think the with the narrative being that he's in Russia's pocket and the vote for it being so strong, he felt he had to sign it, but that in his mind doesn't mean he can't then later also complain about it. So,
I have to commend us. We're about a half hour into the show, and we've been very intellectual. We've talked about the First Amendment and Russian sanctions and sanctuary cities. We've been very good, but now it's time. Monopolies, mini
Monopolies.
Monopsonies.
But now,
thank you.
Now we're getting into the Russia
Minosa.
scandal. We're getting into the grand jury that Bob Mueller has apparently his second grand jury, or the second grand jury in this investigation, was organized this week. And now we can talk about the really fun stuff, which is Trump going to get indicted?
Well, I mean, I'm just really happy that, this is after all those Hillary Clinton grand juries that, we're finally getting, Oh, wait. Sorry. Yeah.
There is a better chance that the ham sandwich Trump eats for lunch tomorrow gets indicted than he does, for two reasons. One, because it's a ham sandwich, cue the old lawyer joke. But secondly, the purpose of this is not to indict Trump. The purpose of this is to impeach him. Indicting and convicting presidents don't happen in courts of law because that's not the point of what you're trying to do. You're trying to remove the president from office if he committed a high crime or misdemeanor. That goes to Congress for impeachment. So no, the president is not going to get indicted because indictment isn't the end game. The question here is, what does this mean about Mueller's investigation? And what it means is that it has gone into the next phase. He is at the point where he thinks it's time to impanel a grand jury, a new grand jury, his own grand jury, not the one that came from Dana Bente over in Alexandria. And now it's about, phase 3 will be finding witnesses who can turn. And witnesses that don't turn get indicted because they refuse to turn. That's, that's the politics of this sort of thing. And given something like this, if what most of Trump's critics think happened actually happened, then those people who are indicted will and should be convicted. If it didn't happen, then they would and will and probably should be acquitted. We'll just have to see what happens with the investigation as it goes forward.
Let me ask you a question. If it really happened, if the whole thing, Trump is guilty as a kid with his head stuck in a pickle jar, if he is guilty, how many senators or Republicans will still say, I don't know, and these are the guys who the congressmen will actually vote to impeach, or will just say, no, I think he's innocent. I mean, what's your numbers? I mean,
that's a sliding scale. It depends on what comes out in the investigation
and what happens in 2018.
There's also the impact of the 2018 election. Although I would note, the Democrats actually gained seats in the 1998 election, and that did not stop Bill Clinton from getting impeached.
Right.
In fact, oddly enough, it encouraged the Republicans to impeach him. This is a different scenario, though, of course. Sorry about that. It really depends upon what comes out in the investigation. If, for example, there is evidence that Trump himself was aware of his campaign working with Russian government agents with either the Desinformatia campaign or anything else, then you're going to see at least half the Republicans bolt, if not more. But if it's something that only goes as far as Manafort, if it's something that goes only as far as Carter Page, if it's something that even goes only as far as some of the kids but doesn't get to Trump himself, then I think a majority of Republicans in the House and Senate, maybe as many as 3/4 of them, hold firm and say, look, this is about whether the president committed high crimes and misdemeanors, not his campaign manager, not his children, not anybody else, and they will hold firm.
I think DJ, I think you're right. However, I'm going to be the one that goes out on a limb here and say, you're right. In your scenario, I agree. There is no impeachment or no successful impeachment vote. I have a feeling that Trump did something. Listen, I have no insights. I'm just spitballing like everybody else here, but he sure is acting guilty. And I have a feeling that this guy knows where the bodies are buried in terms of what the connections were between the Russians end his campaign, whether it was financial, whether it was some type of quid pro quo. He knew about it. He was briefed about it, in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying that I can cite evidence to this as of yet. And I have a feeling that Robert Mueller is going to try to be the first prosecutor to indict a sitting president. I think it's a test case that is waiting to happen. I think Mueller might be the kind of guy who wants to make history. And I like Mueller. I'm not bad-mouthing him, but I think we all want to leave our mark on the world. And I think this would be, for a prosecutor, quite the mark. And to say this is about impeachment, yes and no, because an indicted president is more impetus for an impeachment vote, and an impeachment vote that's successful. So, those who poo-poo it, yes, we're not at the place now where it's going to happen, but there's a lot that's going to happen between now and 2019 when a new Congress sits down and when a Senate that might be a little bit closer in numbers is seated. And I don't see us getting to 2020 without some kind of an impeachment vote in the House. I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but I don't see us getting there without some type of a movement to impeach.
When we do get to 2020, whether there's an impeachment vote or not, there will be another presidential election. Speaking of, there is at least one Democrat who has declared. His name is Congressman John Delaney from Western Maryland. And the only reason I mention him is because after looking him over, I myself have decided to support him. So that's full disclosure for everyone listening whenever I talk about the 2020 presidential race from here on out.
Okay, can I jump in and ask you about him?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, because, you let us know in an email this week that you were going to make this announcement. And I was a little surprised because do you know enough about Congressman Delaney? I mean, I know you like his stand on a couple of issues. But, boy, to say you're backing someone for president, did you know about this guy beforehand? And do you really think he's presidential material? I know you like his positions, but do you think the man is presidential material?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. I am also rather surprised that I've decided to come out this quickly for him. But in part, I'm surprised because that I would find a candidate this quickly. That the first one out of the box would tick so many of the boxes that I have. Sorry, I used box so many times. But one of the things I've been looking to see out of the Democratic Party is to see them move in what I would call a more economically conservative direction, a more robust direction on foreign policy. And in a lot of ways, Congressman Delaney reflects that. He has steadfastly supported the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a very bold and brave thing to do within the Democratic Party. I happen to agree with him, so I would say that. He's very hawkish on Syria. He wants Bashar Assad out. I think that is exactly the right way to go. I have talked in this podcast many times about how to engineer a decent supply side reform that appeases those who are very concerned about global warming by essentially shifting taxation from corporate and personal income to carbon consumption. And John Delaney has presented that as a bill for each of the last two Congresses. He is in his third term in the Congress. He has chosen not to run for a fourth term to focus on the presidential race. Although Donald Trump has sort of made this sound horrible, Mr. Delaney is a successful businessman, and the fact that he actually has succeeded at a business, not failed upwards and looked like he succeeded. He has the right, I think, private sector experience to understand the private sector economy. Real estate is a very strange beast within the economy. You can be an expert at real estate and actually be good at it and not really know the way the rest of the economy works. Donald Trump is bad at real estate and doesn't know how the rest of the economy works either, of course. But I think that is the right sort of combination of private experience and public experience. Barack Obama showed us that you don't need a lot of federal experience to be president. And I think that while Barack Obama made a number of mistakes as president, he certainly did far fewer than his critics claim. And he, especially in compared to the current occupant of the White House, I think he had a record of which you could look back and say, yes, that really wasn't half bad, all things considered. So,
okay, but DJ, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. You've laid out some great reasons why you like where Congressman Delaney stands on the issues. But I'm going to bring you back to my first question, which is, do you believe he is presidential material, and that a 3-term congressman who I never heard of before.
I've never heard
this
of
week. And Molly,
Me
that
neither.
this person is going to come
Nope.
in and I'm going to say the word steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, somebody like that.
Okay, first of all, I don't like the term steal because not a single vote has been cast.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right.
So the issue here is not the fact that he is not very well known. Certainly is something that he will have to address over the next few years. It's probably why he announced so early, so that he could let people know more about him and show that yes, he does have presidential material. I was trying to quote him. I should do that. So that he can show that he does have presidential material, even though people do not know who he is. I know some folks in Maryland who have spoken very highly of him, including, by the way, our missing podcaster, Rebecca. She has spoken very highly of him. So it is not a matter of, stealing the nomination from someone who has a higher profile. It is a matter of he is presenting himself as a candidate. I like what I see. I like enough of what I see to support him. It is up to him to show the rest of the Democratic Party that he is presidential material. I am confident that he will. He has 2 years and some change to do that. We will see if I am right.
And what about on the GOP side? I mean, there's been some speculation that someone like a Senator Sass or Tom Cotton or somebody else, John Kasich, a name that we love to quote here because he's a favorite of Greg's.
Well, John Kasich can't be president because he's such an asshole. There, I'm going to just say that.
Apparently, that is no longer a criteria.
No.
I was about to say.
Seeing as he's been our governor for way too long, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, now let me ask you this, Greg.
Yeah.
You're in a voting booth. It's 2020. Let's just say somehow it came down to a choice between Donald Trump and John Kasich. What do you do?
Oh my gosh! I really, that would be a really, really tough choice.
Okay, I'll give you a third choice: Bill Cosby.
Oh God!
Does that make it easier?
Okay, before Kevin.
Oh my God!
Before Kevin threw Bill Cosby into all of this, and therefore set us down, careening down a path we don't
I was just about to say.
Greg's hesitation is the real reason Trump won. Because deep down, so many of us as voters, not just the pundits and the elected officials and the party people, but as voters, we didn't take him seriously. And we still don't take him seriously. Even in the back of Greg's mind, he's thinking, I don't really want to make that choice. And there's no way I have to make that choice because there's really no way that Trump's going to get himself reelected after all this. We are underestimating him yet again. If we recognized the strengths that his people have, if not him, then Greg would not hesitate to make that decision. He would say, I would walk in with the clothespin firmly planted on my nose and vote for John Kasich if I had to drink a fifth to steady my hand to do so. The fact that he can't do it means that even now he doesn't fully appreciate
He's right.
what Donald Trump has done and the danger of what Donald Trump can still do.
DJ is right. I would vote for Kasich even though I hate him, but yes, he's right.
Okay, so, I said that we weren't going to talk about healthcare this week and that was unusual, but here I am going to talk about healthcare. I think if healthcare does not get repealed and replaced, then there will be a primary challenge. That's my prediction. I don't know by whom, but that's what I'll say.
I know I am certain it won't be from Tom Cotton.
No, I don't think it'll be from.
Tom Cotton is clearly lined up with a Trump win.
No, he's no.
What about?
But I could see it coming from a Kasich or.
What about Jeff Flake?
Or Flake.
Flake was hitting.
If Flake survives re-election, then he like the magnet of the North Pole or of the strength of the North Pole. He will attract all the never Trumps to him. Whether he actually wants to run or not, I'm not sure. One name I think is more likely who will run because his Senate seat is not up in 2020, whereas it was in 2016, and he has a lot more street cred and respect on the right and in what is left of the intellectual movement on the right than anyone else. It's not Ted Cruz, it's Mike Lee from Utah. Oh. Keep an eye on him. He's more likely to actually jump in 2020 if anyone does than either Cruz or Flake at this point. I would say.
Did Mike Lee endorse Trump, or did he endorse what's his name from Utah?
I don't think Mike Lee made any endorsement at all.
Yeah, I'm not sure. If he did, it was late, but I'm not sure that he did.
Yeah, I'm sure it was late. I did not follow that one because I'm rarely influenced by,
Well, no, Mike Lee is not the kind of person who would influence you.
No, exactly. That's why I was like, I wonder who Mike Lee voted for. Yeah.
Okay, now I have to jump in here because I put Greg on the hot seat. It's only fair that we go around the table. So, Molly, you're in the voting booth.
Yep.
Are you ready? You have two choices. There's no Bill Cosby on this ticket.
Okay.
It's Donald Trump
Okay.
or California Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Oh, definitely Donald Trump.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I chose Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Why wouldn't I choose Donald Trump over crazy Aunt Maxine?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that you had voted for him, but that's
Wow.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
I knew she did. Okay.
And DJ, it's only fair that I ask you one.
Fine, go ahead.
Okay, you're in the voting booth. It's 2020. Donald Trump has the R next to his name, and the person with the D next to their name is Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones.
I would vote. That's fine. Cersei Lannister. Because at the very least, Jaime Lannister will have her ear, if not other parts of her anatomy. and I for all of Jaime Lannister's faults, he does have the interests of his country at heart as he sees it, and that would be better than Donald Trump. So yeah,
Okay.
I would go with the Lannisters.
Anybody want to throw one at me before we wrap up?
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
I have one. Okay, Kevin, you are in the voting booth, and your options are Donald Trump Sr. or Donald Trump Jr.
Man.
First, let me just say that you pulled out a name that I wasn't expecting.
All right. That's not enough of a distinction.
I think that was a tongue-in-cheek one.
Yeah, okay.
But I would vote for Donald Trump Jr. over him. I really would. Okay.
Okay. Let's try it differently. Donald Trump, and Mike Pence.
I'd vote for Pence in a heartbeat.
Okay, what about...
Let me just elaborate on that. I said to my friends, and I've been saying this almost since January 20th, as bad as I think Mike Pence would be, at least he would restore honor to the presidency. So yes, hands down, Mike Pence.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, and with that, we want to thank everybody for listening to this rambling discussion about politics. We also want to point out that on our website we have an article that was written by a guest commentator this week, a gentleman named Bill Gleed, who has served on a grand jury, and he gives some information about how grand juries work and why he thinks Donald Trump might have something to worry about with a new grand jury impaneled. So for our listeners who haven't been to our website yet and seen some of the commentaries we have there, I highly recommend that one. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Facebook at facebook.com/MorePerfectUnion Podcast, and share our link on your Facebook timelines so your friends can discover us as well. And if you would like to join our political debate between shows, we have a political group that we're all a member of. It's called Open Fire. It's not affiliated with the show, but we're all in it. And it's a lovely place for people to go and yell at each other. So we're all there. We'd love to see you there, too, yelling at us. And with that, any last words before we say goodbye?
DJ, how tall is John Delaney? Because that whole taller person always wins. So I think before you pick...
I'm not... I
always pick my candidate on their height.
Wasn't Trump shorter than Clinton?
Only in their souls. Only in their souls. And like you said, the taller person wins.
Oh, nice.